Good afternoon, we are pleased to welcome you to our channel. Today, January 5th, as always, we begin a review of the operational situation over the past 24 hours. In the last day, the enemy conducted 58 military clashes on the front line, made 7 missile and 58 airstrikes, as well as 57 shelling from multiple rocket launchers. It is worth noting that the fire was conducted not only on the positions of our troops, but also on the settlements in the border and frontline zone to the full depth of the enemy's firepower. As a result of these terrorist attacks, there are wounded and dead among the civilian population, damage to housing both private and apartment buildings, and other civilian infrastructure has been damaged. Airstrikes were mainly directed at Kharkiv, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson regions. The enemy's artillery fire hit about 110 settlements in different regions from the north to the south. Moving on to the areas of responsibility of the military groups. Let's start with the area of responsibility of Troops Group North. It includes Volyn and Polzy directions, where the operational situation remains stable and controlled. Also, the Slobodskoy direction appears to be controlled, but cannot be recognized as stable. Here the situation is more tense with regard to shelling by the Russian Federation. The enemy is trying to conduct counter-sabotage activities on our territory and maintains a presence in the border areas of Sumy, Chernihiv and Kharkiv regions. In addition, it is increasing the number of engineering structures on its territory, reinforcing the border. As for the zone of responsibility of the Khortytsia Troops Group, which starts from the Kupiansk direction, here our defenders repulsed 3 attacks near Senkivka and east of Petropavlovka in the Kharkiv region. There was another attempt to attack the defense positions south of the Alshny locality, but it was also unsuccessful. The enemy tried to improve its tactical position in the eastern locality of Ternivaya, but also failed. Fighting in the area of this locality continues to this day. The front line in the Kupiansky and Lymansky direction remains unchanged, and the enemy does not take active offensive and assault actions against our positions, mainly exchanges of fire, position battles and artillery strikes. In the Bakhmut direction the tension has subsided a bit. The enemy's combat activity amounted to only 4 attacks on our positions. They mainly took place near Bogdanivka. The enemy also continues to press near Kromovoy. Unfortunately, some of the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces near Kromovoy were lost, which shows the partial success of the Russian army. It is worth noting that the enemy was also advancing near Kleshchev and Andriivka. At Kleshchev they managed to repulse all attacks, but in Andriivka unfortunately the enemy managed to improve their tactical position near the railroad. Along the perimeter of the zone of responsibility of the operational and strategic group of troops Tavria, which starts from the Avdiivka direction, the enemy continues to try to encircle Avdiivka. Our soldiers continue to hold the defense and inflict significant losses on the Russian troops, which is already beginning to affect other operational directions, as the enemy has to redistribute equipment and weapons from other directions over the past 24 hours on the northern flank of Avdiivka. Ukrainian defense forces repulsed 13 attacks, mainly attacks concentrated in the area of Novobakhmutovka and Stepnoy. It should be noted that in Stepnoy, according to our military, the Russian assault begins daily, which is steadily reflected with heavy losses for the enemy. On the northern flank, 19 enemy attacks were recorded in the area of North Pervomaiskoye and Nevelska. Despite this, the Ukrainian forces managed to repel the attacks, while the enemy failed to consolidate their positions completely. At the moment, the fighting continues, but control over the situation is maintained in other areas of fighting, such as Marianska and Shakhtarskoye. The enemy is also trying to attack, but the Ukrainian forces successfully repel these attacks. Going into a more analytical plane, although the activity of enemy forces has decreased compared to the previous month, the Ukrainian command expects that after Christmas Russia may again increase the intensity of hostilities. Ukrainian aviation struck 12 areas of concentration of enemy personnel and equipment, and rocket and artillery units destroyed 3 air defense zones, 3 artillery firing positions, an electronic warfare station and 2 troop control points. During the last 24 hours the enemy suffered significant losses: 780 military personnel, 12 tanks, 21 armored combat vehicles, 28 artillery systems, 2 air defense systems, 1 multiple rocket launcher, 2 cruise missiles, 32 units of automotive equipment and 6 units of special vehicles. Ukraine's remotely piloted maritime drones took part in combat operations for the first time, clashing with Russian Federation security boats. The Security Service of Ukraine carried out a successful operation in cyberspace, repelling new hacker attacks aimed at mobile operator Kyivstar. After a large-scale intervention in the operator and strengthening its defense systems, the security service not only restored the operator's functioning within a few days, but also repelled new cyber attacks aimed at its complete destruction. One of the big news in recent days was the prisoner of war exchange that took place yesterday, which was the largest exchange since the invasion began. 230 defenders of Ukraine were exchanged for 248 occupants. Among those released were representatives of the different compositions of the Ukrainian military forces. The Armed Forces 130 people, the Territorial Defense 14 people, the Navy 14 people, the National Guard of Ukraine 55 people, the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine 38 people and the National Police of Ukraine 30 people. This is a huge victory for their families, especially for those whose loved ones were in missing in action status. Much help for this exchange came from the United Arab Emirates, which mediated the process. Another important piece of news was the return to Ukraine of the last female medical officer of the 36th Brigade, who had been held captive for almost 2 years. Halina Fedoshin was an active participant in the defense of Mariupol during the fighting. There was also an unexpected case on the front when a former police general of the Russian Federation, who joined the military service in Russia and then came to participate in the fighting in Ukraine, was killed in the course of military operations. His example is a vivid confirmation that the choice to join the fighting on the side of the occupiers has its consequences. The Ukrainian political situation is gradually evolving, following the news of President Lukashenko's signing of amendments to the presidential law that guarantee life inviolability, personal protection, and the right to state property for himself and his family after his resignation. There have been thoughts of a possible end to his presidency. These moves could play a key role in stabilizing the political situation in Ukraine, facilitating the transition to a new stage of the state's development. Putin is clearly seeking confrontation with NATO and has signed a decree granting Russian citizenship to foreigners serving in the Russian army abroad. This implies that mercenaries recruited to serve in the armed forces outside Russia will be granted Russian citizenship for themselves and their families after signing a 1-year contract. In addition, the head of Russia's Central Election Commission expressed her doubts about the legitimacy of the elections, citing the presence of dead souls on the voter list. This doubt relates to the ideology of the special military operation, as people who gave their lives in this operation are equated with unconditional support for the president and his party in the elections. Thank you all for watching this video. If you want to stay up to date and get the latest news, then subscribe to our channel and click on the bell not to miss new releases.